Landlords requiring and demanding illegal deposits? Yes, that's what we talk about and more with our favorite paralegal, Bita Delisi, right after this. Here we are, my friends, with our favorite paralegal in all the land, Bita Delisi. How are you, my friend?
I'm well, Gary. How are you doing?
I am doing excellent. We're halfway through November, and you've just told me off camera some pretty amazing news, at least from your business perspective, but share with us. And I know you always started off with a really interesting story, and I find this one really unique in the sense that when push comes to shove, we need the right people working on our team. And obviously you have a great team. Tell us what happened over the last couple of days.
Well, very interestingly enough, we were approached by CBC The National to do a segment on the rise of cash for keys. And I was telling you that we've done our stats, and for this year alone, we're almost at 1,000 cash for keys transactions alone,
Wow.
987 to be exact.
Wow.
And what's crazy is because of the delays, the interest rates, the rise of the interest rates, which add to the landlord-tenant board delays because many sellers are putting up their properties for sale, and tenants taking the position that I'm not moving out unless you give me an arm and a leg. So cash for keys is on the rise. Huge rise, huge numbers. I actually had one client who sold her property, and she offered her tenant something like 20 or 25,000, and her tenant came back with $60,000.
That was their request for
That was the
60,000.
$60,000. Can you believe that?
Wow.
No justification. And if they were to go to the board, they would only be entitled to 1 month's rent. That's it.
Yeah. So what do we do in that case? Okay, hang on. There's lots of things I want to jump in on. However, without sharing the entire interview or the premise of what happened with the National there, give us a little tidbit of what they were talking about. Were they really focusing on the rise of cash for keys and that type of thing?
So they were focusing on the rise of cash for keys from the perspective of a landlord. And then I think they went to interview a tenant. But the way a tenant views a cash for keys is different than a landlord. In some circumstances, Gary, cash for keys is the only option available to some landlords, especially when they've sold their property and the tenant is refusing to leave. And I'll tell you, it's because of the landlord and tenant board delays. Had it been 5 years ago where there would be 1 or 2 months wait to get to the board, I mean, it wouldn't matter because your closing date would be 60, 90, or 120 days anyways,
Yeah.
right? Whereas right now, I mean, who's going to wait a minimum of 8 months,
So
right?
let's talk about that. And I know we've talked about this in the past, and we were cautiously optimistic, shall we say, because of the new hires or the additional of adjudicators to the landlord tenant board, and we're able to get our hearings sooner. But what's going on here?
So it's interestingly enough, I was telling you that we're hiring new paralegals for our firm, and one of my newer paralegals. Now, when I say newer, she's been in the business about a year, and she's doing really well. She's going on showings and showings. She's going on hearings, and on one of her hearings, she had to take a minute to come and ask me, Beta, am I mistaken? Because on a non payment of rent application, we have to inform the board on the day of the hearing by way of an L1 or an L9 update sheet the total amount of arrears that are owed up until the day of the hearing. And she said to me, is what I'm confused about is this adjudicator doesn't know what the difference is between an L1 update sheet and an L9 update sheet. And it's really scary because the person making a decision doesn't even know what the difference is. And
That's
we're
where we're
leaving,
at.
that's where we're at. We're leaving these people, the lay person, to make a decision on a matter of somebody that's owed 30, 40, $50,000, and they don't even know what the difference is.
That's crazy. That's crazy. What and that's I mean, obviously there's going to be growing pains, but we don't need growing pains like that, especially when we're already backed up, like you said, like 8 months as an example.
8 months. It's
Yeah.
insane. It's insane. Actually, there was another hearing that one of my paralegals went on. And I don't know why some of these adjudicators, they open their mouths when they run out of time and they say, we're going to reschedule this matter for another 2 to 3 months. And the client who's listening expects the matter to be rescheduled in 2 to 3 months. And then it
That's
takes
not going to
about
happen.
9 months for it to be scheduled. And what happens? They call us 1,000 times saying, what's happening? What's happening? The adjudicator said this. And that's why we always say you have to take what the adjudicator says like a grain of salt. Like,
Yeah.
just because they say they're going to send out their order in 2 days doesn't mean they will. Just because they say they're going to reschedule for the next 2 to 3 months doesn't mean they will.
Yeah. Crazy. Crazy. And I know in our environment now, like even after COVID, we're still doing, I shouldn't say still, perhaps in a better case scenario, we're doing all the hearings online through Zoom, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And how how great is that for you as a business owner to help mentor your paralegals because they're in the next office in their hearing and she can jump out or he can jump out and just quickly get some verification. I mean, that's one of the good things to come from this, the way I see it.
It's great. But not only that, Gary, we get to service all of Ontario now.
Yeah.
Right? So we get to reach a lot more landlords who need help instead of just the GTA, which
Yeah.
is fantastic.
No, that's really, really good. And everything's recorded now, right? That's a huge piece of the puzzle.
Huge, especially when the adjudicator doesn't know the difference between the forms,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh
It's
gosh,
educational. And as well, I know you've used this in the past. It also helps create evidence, correct?
that's right. Huge evidence, evidence
Yeah.
that can be relied on future hearings.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So obviously, we talked about the number of cash for keys on the rise, and it's an interesting world that we live in, right? We see our real estate market or the number of transactions obviously down year over year, and people choosing not to sell. They're trying to figure out how to sell if you're an investor, not sure how to do it. Um, some businesses are on the decline, and others like yours are on the incline, and that's that you can say that's good or bad or either here or there, but that's just what happens in market, as they turn. The other
That's
thing
right.
that happens with when the market turns, especially on the rental side, is, landlords will say can get creative. Yes, creative on what they're asking applicants to do with funds and deposits. Talk to us a little bit about prepaid rent, paying 6 months, 12 months of rent up front. Is it legal? How do we do it? Is it possible? What's going on here?
Well, we all know that it's common practice in real estate to offer more than the first and last month's rent. We know it's common practice because of the immigrants that are coming in who don't have jobs, who can't provide verification of income. We can't. We also have students who are not working, or their parents are overseas and they're paying the rent. So what happens? They voluntarily offer more than what the law permits or what the law allows the landlord to request. So the law only allows a landlord to obtain the last month's rent deposit equivalent to 1 month's rent and only apply to the last month of the tenancy. Now, we have landlords requesting, so I'm going to say requesting voluntary payments by a tenant. And when they say voluntary, they want to use the term voluntary in the lease agreement to circumvent the act, which doesn't protect you anyways even if the other side agrees.
Yeah. I'm curious, is voluntary, is that a legal term we can put in our documentation?
I mean, depends what kind of documentation. Not in the lease, because the Residential Tenancies Act trumps the lease,
Yeah.
right? So it doesn't matter what the parties agree to. And Gary, it's no different than us agreeing that the tenant is going to be responsible to shovel the snow and cut the grass,
Yeah.
right?
We,
Because the law says, hey, landlord, you are the one that's responsible for maintenance.
yeah. And that, I don't know about you, but that's probably one of the most overlooked items as a landlord that I think we could possibly do and decide to keep doing. Right? No, you live there. Or if it's a single family home, you live there, you shovel. Well,
That's
you can
right.
ask. You can
Yeah.
ask.
The right way to go about it is to hire the tenant as a contractor to do it, which
There you
means
go.
it's separate from the lease, separate from the rent. I pay you, Gary, to cut the grass and shovel the snow. I don't know, $50 a month, $100 a month. But then, Gary, the question is, do you get insurance? Right? Because now you're providing a service. It's kind of a business, is it not? So do you get insurance? And now it's costing you to, cut the grass and shovel the snow.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that piece though of hiring the tenant back outside. Obviously, we always do things outside because it doesn't work together. Those
It
two
doesn't.
items, right?
Exactly. And Gary, a landlord has to be prepared that if a tenant says, I'm no longer undertaking this responsibility to cut the grass and shovel the snow, that the landlord's going to have to hire somebody else to do it, or they're going to have to do it themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm surprised. And maybe it happens more than I know of. Tenants refusing not to shovel or cut the grass, keep the lawn, and in a maintained fashion. Does it happen more than I'm led to believe? Or
I think it happens quite more often than you think. In fact, there's actually a recent decision from the divisional court that actually ruled for this being valid. That if the parties agree that the tenant is responsible, that the tenant is responsible. But it's a divisional court order decision, and I don't think this particular judge who made that decision actually is familiar with the Residential Tenancies Act.
interesting, interesting. My brain has just gone into math mode, or and I'm thinking, man, like if we're wondering why so many investors are putting up their properties for sale. If you're in a single family home or in an area where you do have grass and you do have to keep up with that maintenance and snow removal, and you're on a variable rate mortgage, your your payments have skyrocketed. And if the tenant refuses, in this case, to take on any of those extra activities, you're easily another $400 a month.
Easily. And Gary, we haven't even talked about the increase in the property taxes, right?
Yeah,
Nobody talks about the property taxes going up. And what about hydro, heat and hydro? Nobody
yeah,
talks about that going up,
that's right.
right?
That's right. It's all doom and gloom, Beta. Why do people own properties?
I
Well,
know.
people own because, there are still many, many good opportunities. And although they might be shrinking at the moment, but like you and I, we talked about this in the past, we've owned a number of our properties for, 10 plus years. And when you get great tenants, and there are great tenants out there, trust me, we have some. You and I both have some.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, we do.
it's it's phenomenal, right? It really is. And of course, we're happy to go fix stuff when you have a great tenant, or for our great tenants, because we have great relationships. And I know, like you and many others, there are times when we don't have great tenants. That's and that's all part of it, right?
It happens. It even happens to me, Gary.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, you're dealing with people,
Yeah.
right?
That's right. That's right.
Real
That's
estate
right.
is still the best investment. My father-in-law has built his wealth around owning real estate. So, I mean, like any business, Gary, there are headaches. I
Yeah,
mean, owning a convenience store is a headache too, right?
that's right.
Well, I mean, again, real estate is still the best investment. At least you have a tangible product, I'm going to say, whether the market goes up or down. People
That's
are
right.
always be in need of housing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Okay. Circling back to what we started off with, your interview for the National. When can people see that?
It airs December 5th. I don't have a time yet, but I know in the next couple of weeks, we will let you know what the time is. We hope everybody joins in and watches because lots of great information on the rise of cash for keys.
Excellent stuff. And how do people get a hold of you?
Check out our social media, our Instagram and Facebook at Stonegate Legal Services. Our website is also great, stonegate.legalservices.ca. Lots of great information. And if you want to book a free discovery call, which is similar to a consult, you can book it right off the website.
That's fantastic. There you are, my friends. So that's Peter Delisi. I'm Gary McGowan. We'll see everybody on the next episode. Goodbye for now.
Bye for now.